Fellas, it's been a few days since UFC Saudi Arabia. The dust has settled a little bit, but I still think that Alexander Volkov might just be the most underrated fighter in the UFC, and I've been thinking this even before his fight with Sergey Pavlovich, and I know it's ironic because I did pick Sergey Pavlovich to beat him, but at least I was kind of back and forth with who I was choosing. Ever since this fight got announced, I've been back and forth on who I'm picking. You look at Alexander Volkov, he's much better on the feet than anyone Pavlovich has ever faced, poor Tom Aspinall. It wasn't like I discredited Alexander Volkov completely, but I think he's one of the most underrated fighters in the UFC. I think people just look at Volkov as another guy in the division. People don't really give him credit for the wins, and more often than not, people are just discrediting his opponents, if anything. So I'm here to tell you why Alexander Volkov might be the most underrated fighter currently in the UFC. And we'll start off by looking at his losses, right? We'll keep it fair. We'll look at the guys he's lost to in the UFC. First loss, Tom Aspinall. By the way, this is not in order of who he lost to, but the first loss I've got on this list is Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall in that fight kind of dominated Alexander Volkov, but at the end of the day, that's Tom Aspinall. He's the best heavyweight in the world right now, and he does that to literally every heavyweight he goes against. It doesn't matter who Aspinall goes against, he does it to everyone, right? So there's no shame in losing to Tom Aspinall, and that was his most recent loss. The other loss, Cyril Gane, again, a fairly competitive fight on the feet. Cyril Gane won the decision. Cyril Gane's one of the best strikers in the heavyweight division. There's no shame in losing to Cyril Gane. His other loss was to Curtis Blaydes. Curtis Blaydes absolutely out-wrestled him in that fight, but to give credit to Alexander Volkov, Curtis Blaydes is a nightmare matchup for most people in the division, so you can't really discredit him for beating Blaydes, another top 5 opponent. All these guys are top 5 heavyweights. And then the other one, Derek Lewis. Fair enough, on paper, losing to Derek Lewis might look bad, but in Alexander Volkov's credit, he was dominating the fight against Derek Lewis and then got caught right at the end of the fight. So it isn't like he got dominated by Lewis. It isn't like a Lewis versus Nascimento type fight. Volkov was winning, and then right at the end of the fight, he kind of just got caught by Derek Lewis. And that's it. Those are his only losses in the UFC. It ain't like he's just some Neil Magny or anything like that. This dude has only lost to 4 guys in the UFC, 3 of them being top 5 opponents, and then the other one being a fight that he was dominating and then I got caught at the end. And if we look at his best wins, obviously, just recently against Sergey Pavlovich, most people were picking Pavlovich to win. This scary Russian who's just decimating everyone, coming back after his fight with Aspinall, and Volkov just pieced up Pavlovich like it's nothing, just absolutely dominated him. Alistair Overeem, I know at the time when he battered Alistair Overeem, it was an old Alistair Overeem, but he still absolutely destroyed him. Verdum as well, Marcin Tybura. I know people are going to look at Tybura and think that that's a laughable guy to include in one of his best wins, but Tybura's underrated, man. He's probably the best fat heavyweight in the UFC as of right now. And then even that, his other notable wins, Rosenstrike went out there, just decimated him in 1 round. Tatu Ivaza had a competitive fight with Tatu Ivaza, but was able to get the submission, and to be honest, he was piecing up Tatu Ivaza, absolutely ran through Alexander Romanov, made him look like an absolute amateur. Big country boy Roy Nelson as well back in the day, Greg Hardy, those are his other notable wins in the UFC. And another thing I've noticed about Alexander Volkov is that people have kind of seen that, you know, Rebellis Despain has lost, and they're kind of mad that we don't have anyone to exterminate these fat heavyweights. Dude, Alexander Volkov is Rebellis Despain. Rebellis Despain was hyped up as this 6'7" fat heavyweight Terminator. Alexander Volkov is that 6'7" fat heavyweight Terminator. He's genuinely just a better version of Rebellis Despain. So I don't think we need to be mad that Rebellis Despain ain't here to clear out the fat heavyweights when we have Alexander Volkov to do it for us. This dude is the definition of a fat heavyweight destroyer. But this is why I personally think he should be facing Cyril Gane next. If you saw my matchmaking video yesterday, you'd have seen that I picked Alexander Volkov to pick Cyril Gane. I think this should be the next fight in the heavyweight division, the #1 contender fight. And when I say #1 contender fight, I'm talking about the real belt, the one that Aspinall and Blaydes are fighting for. I just kind of want to ignore the one that Jones and Stipe are facing each other for, because that ain't the real belt. I'm talking about a #1 contender fight, and the winner faces the winner of Aspinall and Blaydes. The first reason is that I think they're both 1 fight away from a title shot. Both of these guys are in the same position where they don't necessarily deserve it just yet, but they're both a fight away from the title shot. We look at Alexander Volkov's last 5 fights. He lost to Tom Aspinall back in 2022, but since then he's been in a 4-fight winning streak, 3 of them coming by way of finish, and then the other one being the fight where he absolutely dominated Sergey Pavlovich. And to be honest, I'm fair play to Pavlovich for not getting finished in that fight, because he was getting battered. So Volkov's done a 4-fight winning streak, like I said, 3 of them coming by way of finish. Maybe the 3 wins might have not been against the highest caliber opponents, but they've been against ranked opponents, and he also beat Sergey Pavlovich. And we look at Cyril Gane, he definitely doesn't deserve a title shot just yet, because he's lost 2 out of his last 3, and the 3 that he has beaten is Derek Lewis, Tatu Ivaza, and Sergey Spivak. Ain't the most impressive wins. If he can beat Alexander Volkov with the way that Volkov's looking recently, I wouldn't mind seeing Gane versus Volkov for the belt. So That is the first reason why I think these guys should fight each other next. The next reason is that I think it should be a lot more competitive than the first time these guys fought. Obviously, these guys fought a couple years ago. Ciryl Gane won, but I think this should be more competitive now because Alexander Volkov, he seems to be much better now. And I'm not saying that Ciryl Gane hasn't improved either, but I think it will be extremely competitive now that Volkov has put together a bit of a winning streak. He's active. He's way more active than Ciryl Gane, and he just looks more the part. He looks like he's got a better game plan going into fights, and he seems like he really has the best game plan to beat everyone he goes against. So I think this will be way more competitive than the first time these guys met. And the third reason is that this is actually a really fun heavyweight fight. When we think of the heavyweight division, fun isn't necessarily the first word that comes to mind because we kind of just think of these fat heavyweights or these uncompetitive, unathletic heavyweights facing each other. This would actually be a really fun heavyweight fight. Two of some of the best strikers in the heavyweight division going at it. You've got Alexander Volkov, a guy that just pieces you up round after round, and by the end of the fight, he makes it look like your face is falling off. And then Ciryl Gane, the dude who does the same thing, one of the most athletic and slick kickboxers in the heavyweight division. This would be such a fun heavyweight fight. For a main event in Paris, sign me up. I want to see this fight again. I know we saw it a few years ago, but I think it's a bigger fight now. I think it's a better fight now, and I think it's a more competitive fight now. Now, if we match Alexander Volkov against the current top 10 of the heavyweight division, just in case you're still on track with that fight, I mean, we've got to eliminate Pavlovich, Tybura, and Tatu Ivaza, considering Volkov has already beaten all those guys, so that can't be in the question. I'm also going to eliminate Sergey Spivak, because if these guys were to fight, Alexander Volkov would absolutely decimate Sergey Spivak. I don't think that's competitive fight. Plus, Spivak's already got a fight booked with Tybura. I'm eliminating Jones and Stipe because we may as well not even mention those guys, considering they're in their own world, fighting for their own little belt. And I'm also going to get rid of Aspinall and Blades. Not that that isn't a fight that we might see, or the rematch that we might not see in the future, but Volkov has lost to both of those guys. Plus, they're going to be fighting for a belt, and as I said, I don't think Volkov can get the belt just yet, which leaves us with two heavyweights, which is, like I said, Ciryl Gane and Jailton Almeida. I'm getting rid of Jailton Almeida, even though I think Volkov versus Almeida is a really competitive fight. Almeida, his best win is Derek Lewis. He don't deserve a fight with Volkov when his best win is Derek Lewis. So, once again, proving my point that I think he should fight Ciryl Gane next. I think that's the fight that should happen in the heavyweight division, and I just think that's the best route for Alexander Volkov. The winner can get a title shot, and I think this is definitely the best route for him. Now, if you ask me about my predictions for the rest of Alexander Volkov's career, I think he stays in the top 5 rankings until retirement. The dude is 35 years old. He looks a lot older than he does, especially with his beard. But no, he's only 35 years old in the heavyweight division. This dude has another like 3 to 5 years left. Even more if he wants to, because you can afford to be old in the heavyweight division. I think he stays in the top 5. I don't think anyone, maybe he might lose to 1 or 2 guys in the top 5 rankings, but I don't think anyone outside the top 5 right now, maybe except from Jailton Almeida, beats Alexander Volkov. So I think he's going to stay at least ranked top 5 for the rest of his career. Now, I'll be unbiased. I don't think he becomes a champion. I'm just trying to be realistic. I think the heavyweight division is progressing a little bit too fast. We've got guys like Aspinall, Blades, and Gane, and I just think I just can't see him becoming a champion, whether that be Aspinall's belt or the undisputed belt. I just don't think he can become a champion. In terms of who I think he loses and beats, I think he loses to Tom Aspinall again. We've seen this fight before. I think Aspinall would win again, and I think it's fairly 50-50 against Gane and Blades, because even though Blades and Gane are extremely high, talented heavyweights, and I'm not going to say that Volkov necessarily beats them. With the way that Volkov is looking recently, I think that's a super competitive fight with both of those guys. And I'm going to say that that's 50-50. And then my final prediction for Volkov's career is that I think he will continue to decimate the other heavyweights until this guy retires. Everyone else in the heavyweight division, apart from the elite guys, I think Volkov will decimate. And overall, I just think Alexander Volkov is super underrated. He isn't this flashy he isn't this flashy, knockout artist like a guy like Pavlovich or Lewis. He isn't this guy who's extremely entertaining on the mic. But when you watch him fight, he just picks people apart. And by the end of, look at everyone Volkov beats. Every time he beats them, their face is falling off. If you survive over 2 rounds with Volkov, everybody's face is falling off because Volkov just picks you apart. It's like he's got a sledgehammer and he's just, smacking people in the face with his sledgehammer. He's such an underrated heavyweight. And that is why, personally, I believe that Alexander Volkov is the most underrated fighter in the UFC right now. He isn't this flashy finishing artist or anything like that, but this dude is an absolute monster, and I think he's one of the best heavyweights in the world. Let me know your thoughts on Volkov. Thank you for watching.